let's speak to our guest who is on the line with us at the moment, Professor Kevin Curran, who is a professor of cybersecurity at Ulster University and sits on the advisory group of VOTRI, which is the UK Cyber Security Council in the Northern Ireland Civil Service Cyber Leadership Board. Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you. Good morning, welcome to the show, Professor Kevin.
Good morning, hi.
Thank you so much for being with us this morning. Now, to begin with, what laws are currently in place to deal with online abuse?
Well, in the UK, we have the Malicious Communications Act of 1988, and we also have the Communications Act of 2003. And these have been built up over time, of course. But these acts would have been brought in for more of what we understood at the time for general hacking, really, that these acts would have covered someone maybe hacking into a system, causing malicious destruction of material or modification of material, or even denial of service. But these acts were covering the crimes that we were familiar with back in the early 2000s, the late 90s, again. But of course, social media has come along, and of course, now there's a requirement for a new law to cover things like social media.
Now, when it comes to what the government is doing or what the precautions are, what is the online safety bill? I mean, what measures does the draft legislation actually provide to tackle the threat and abuse which people have online?
Well, ultimately, it's trying to bring the social media giants into line with what the UK requires. In other words, that they're more responsible for content, and of course that they can be fined large fines up to actually 10 million or 18 million or 10% of their global turnover again. So it's a bit like GDP or the thing again, but it's really trying to protect the consumers in the UK, and it applies to any service which is directed at the UK or is used by the UK users as well. And really what it's trying to do is put a duty of care on these platforms again, and it covers a number of things. It covers online harassment. It covers anything which is posted on people's sites again. So whether you're a giant or not, you have a responsibility to take down posts. It also tries to bring in new laws about pornography, requiring a driver's license or, an ID for young people. And again, it just again, now some of the wording in the bill is quite vague. Again, you can imagine it's quite complex. It's quite long. They haven't actually, which is very difficult. Like, the whole thing is to do with harm, but it's very hard to actually define the word harm. What is harm? What is the threshold? But of course, most of us intuitively know what the threshold is, but it is not that simple, actually, when you lay it out, in a technical bill like this. But we really don't know what harm is and what the threshold is either.
Interesting.
How would freedom of speech play into this?
People are worried that, in other words, because the bill brings in the onus on someone like Facebook, for instance, to take down posts which are deemed offensive, of course. Now, a lot of people who complain about this bill don't like the fact that we're asking the social media giants to be the censors, to be able to take down any post that they really wish, really. So that some people, of course, are worried about freedom of speech, and they worry about a platform could be left or it could be right-leaning, and of course that it has more power to actually censor people again. So people are worried about that aspect of it as well. But of course, where do you go from there? Either you get a social media giant to take down online abuse, or again you can have people who are saying, critics who are saying that no, this is censorship really. But it's very difficult to actually find a middle ground there, because all of us agree that we don't want online harm. We don't want people being bullied. We don't want people being harassed and being defamed online. So there is an onus there. So really, it's about the political aspect again. But any bill really will always have people who complain about it, really, who see the other side as well. But these are things that have to be navigated in the future to be able to, protect us from online scams again, and be able to protect us as well, and protect journalism and democratic political debate in the UK as well.
Yeah. In your opinion, do you think the online safety bill can tackle social media abuse of MPs, or should more be added to address the toxicity politicians face on social media?
I don't. I mean, yeah, the bill could, if it's enforced properly and it's agreed by companies. Of course, it could limit the abuse for MPs again, but it's not even MPs. I mean, ordinary people, people in power, people on TV, celebrities again. Anyone who's got any type of profile faces online abuse again. So, of course, I would rather, I don't want any abuse even for, for MPs, for celebrities, whatever else. But it's not specific for MPs. But of course, if it was properly legislated against and properly implemented, MPs, like many other people, would feel a bit more protection.
Yeah.
But of course, some of the problem is that really the bill doesn't cover what a lot of people would say is the right way to do it, and that is go after the people who post the content online. Why don't we go after them directly rather than trying to put too much of an onus on social media giants, even though they do have a role to play? But really, it doesn't do anything about being able to be able to go after the people who are actually posting again. So part of me would be, I would just like to see more resources given to police forces, especially on the cyber side of things, because really we don't have enough cyber crime units in the UK, and that's what's needed, because it takes so much effort to go through the forensic chain of evidence when a crime is committed, and everything now is always digitally recorded, so people's phones are taken, their tablets are taken, their laptops are taken. It depends on whether they have encryption, whether they have a password on there. Then, of course, some phones cannot really be broken into. So the police have a large job there gathering evidence. And again, of course, they've got to maintain that evidence as well. But to be me, I would rather see more cybercrime units, an increase in the police who are trained, an increase in training the police in cybercrime and how to investigate, what happens again. So that's the problem, because even if we identify, because we're multi-jurisdictional again, the internet doesn't know any borders again, and these people are generally located in outside the UK. And how do we ever bring them to prosecution? So we need multi-governmental, we need international cooperation again. So bills like this can drive the debate, can drive it forward again. But of course, usually by the time they come into play like this, they're usually outdated. This will be many years in preparation again. So it's a step forward, but it remains to be seen whether it has teeth.
Professor Curran, would you say that banning anonymity will help stop the abuse of MPs and other people?
Of course it would, but you tell me how to do that, because it really doesn't exist at the moment. There's no barriers to entry for online. We don't have an ID, we don't use our passports. There is nothing to stop any of these, scumbags really, who post stuff and all this. There is no digital verification. That would take a global effort around the world. I'm not saying, well, I think it's one of the hardest things to solve. But really, also people would grab other people's credentials as well and start posting instead of them again. So really, I just can't see, and any of my colleagues really, how you bring in a digital online verification. Now, there are some things you can do a little bit. And in fact, interestingly, the credit card companies are becoming the guardians of the internet to some degree, because we've seen things like WikiLeaks, for instance, in the past, where governments didn't want WikiLeaks, that's Julian Assange, the whistleblower. They didn't want him to get any more money, so the credit card companies were forced to stop taking payments. We've also seen that with actually porn companies as well, where the credit card companies can actually stop the porn companies making money. So actually, credit card companies and the banks actually have a role to play in actually being able to enforce restrictions online. There are other ways of doing it again. So age verification, people are thinking, okay, that might stop online abuse, and it might also obviously stop young people from gaining access to illegal material as well. But really, it's really hard and difficult, if not impossible, to enforce in real life.
And finally, Professor Curran, before we let you go, how can people like ourselves and the general public deal with online abuse? And do you have any recommendations to be a lot safer online, please?
Well, dealing with online abuse, really, all you can do is bring it to the attention of the social media platform that you're on or whatever else. Of course, if it comes through another platform, or even there, you can also bring it to the National Cybersecurity Centre, such as any attacks on your network or anything else. You can always bring these things and file, complaints and hope that it would be followed up. But the problem is you're generally a drop in the ocean unless it's very, very serious, or else you're high profile. You can do that. Of course, in some ways, most people don't get abuse online. They really don't. and it's only a handful of people, and they're the ones we read about. In fact, the biggest danger in my mind about social media is the fragmentation of people's attention. I teach in my labs, and I watch students every 5 minutes checking their phone, young people, because it is so addictive. It is so addictive, and that breaks people's concentration. Years ago, we'd go to a library, we'd read a book, or we'd do our things online, and we'd have concentration. Then we'd take a break. Now with a phone, it's almost impossible for young people especially to come away from the phone. And really, to go deep in any subject, you have to spend time reading the material, processing the material, and having your space to actually let it sink into your deeper recesses of your brain. But if you're checking your phone every 10 minutes, that will never happen. And that's my number one warning to young people is, like, please don't check your phone all the time. It's not that they're going to get abused, because most people are savvy online, but that is the problem. Being safe online goes down to everything. It's like, have two-factor authentication turned on for your major sites where your credit card is. Make sure that even if your password was grabbed, they don't have your phone. Don't go to websites which are dodgy. Again, whenever patches come in for your phone or your operating system, update them, because Google, Microsoft, Apple, they all have very, very clever security teams.
That's right.
They're always fixing the bugs in the 0 days which are found in between. So that's the best thing to do, is keep your systems updated. Therefore, the hackers will go for what we call the low-hanging fruit. That is the people who are using older operating systems, older phones, older tablets, the people who don't update their systems, because they're where all the flaws are and those bugs are, and the 0 days again. So always remain updated. And again, have long passwords. Use a password manager if you can, and have different passwords for every site. And that's just good, behavior online that keeps you safe most of the time.
Brilliant. Professor Curran, it's been an absolute joy and pleasure to talk to you this morning. Thank you for sharing your expertise with us, and we wish you a great day and a great week. Peace be upon you. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.